Hello and welcome to a DEMA Virtual Chapter Meeting. Our guest today is James Hamilton. My name is Natalie Asper-Carnes, your DEMA Virtual Chapter President, and I'm delighted to be your host today. The fundamental purpose of the Domestic Estate Management Association is to raise industry standards. We are a network of individuals striving to make a difference, interested in better serving and protecting the best interests of our principals and clients. DEMA's virtual chapter provides an arena for all members, regardless of title, time zone, or involvement in a local chapter, to access and participate remotely in a face-to-face environment for learning and networking. We encourage very engaging and relevant industry discussions involving presenters from within our private service professional community, global affiliates, preferred suppliers, placement agencies, educators and principals, along with occasional guest speakers. Today we begin our second series focused on security. We'll start by discussing situational security with our guest, James Hamilton. James Hamilton is Senior Vice President of Protection Strategies with Gavin DeBecker Associates. With a long and decorated history, James first served on FBI Director Robert Mueller's protective detail, which included extensive travel to high-threat environments. Next, handpicked by the FBI, Supervisory Special Agent James Hamilton created, developed, and implemented the FBI's Academy's protective training curriculum. James is a certified FBI instructor in firearms, active shooter, tactical skills, emergency driving, and SWAT operations. As the team leader and manager of the FBI's Overseas Survival Awareness Program, James is the perfect person to explore possible scenarios that not only need to be considered, but planned for when addressing situational security. So get your questions ready. Without further ado, James, welcome to DEMA's virtual chapter.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm well. Happy New Year.
Good. Happy New Year to you. So I wanted to just spend some time with your folks, trying to help them with a lot of the questions we get about what is it we do, what is it that we can help them with, how is our relationship supposed to be, and then what do you do? Like, what are some things that the estate managers can do for their own security, or if they're driving one of the kids? And we're going to touch on a bunch of different areas, but again, the bigger topics would be executive protection, what it is, what it isn't. What is your roles and responsibilities with regards to working with them? What are some things you can do to help them? What are some pitfalls that we've seen in the past? And then some kind of what's going on culturally right now, like package bomb guidance and things like that, that you may or may not have an actual plan for. And so the presentation is really from the position of education and discussion, and just some things you can take away with a better sense of, okay, that helps me with what I'm doing. So it's called Concepts of Executive Protection, but we'll be talking about other areas. So just for those that aren't aware of Gavin DeBecker Associates and what we do, we're a firm based in Los Angeles, California. We have 725 full-time employees. We've been doing this a long time, 40 years, and we have supervised and implemented 15 million hours of protective coverage across the globe. It's really our heart and soul. So what is it? The very first question usually is EP. What does that mean? You may hear that term. We speak a lot in acronyms. You all may too, but we do it probably more than anybody in the military. EP is executive protection. And so what is their role? Well, their first thing is to protect that principal from harm. That's it. Like, that's their primary mission. And then their secondary mission would be protect them from embarrassment. We don't want the principal to befall an embarrassing situation, which would be a pie in the face or an egg or something of that nature. But what I like to tell people an awful lot, and is something good to use, is that we are being paid to avoid inappropriate encounters, not attacks. Don't say, oh, we're here to protect you from an attack, sir. We teach our protectors to say we are being paid to avoid an inappropriate encounter. Because if you think about it in that concept or in that context, an inappropriate encounter, if you can avoid those altogether, then an attack would be a byproduct of that. There's no such thing as really, all these encounters that just come upon a principal are majority of the time are inappropriate. Rarely, if ever, does a stranger approach the principal and say, hey, sir, let me give you $1 million. It's usually, give me $1 million. Let me get something from you. So we call them inappropriate encounters. We also, in our firm and in other protection firms, we also provide service. And a lot of times what you'll see is with the state managers or executive assistants, you know, we all kind of get into the same world, if you will, where we're providing a service. And we all have to be very, very sensitive to, you know, touching. We don't want to kind of step on your toes, and you don't want to step on their toes and all that. But if it's a professionally run protective group, they will be concerned with service. And I would say that folks that don't carry luggage or don't, you know, use an umbrella, they're probably not going to last long in this business because there is a service that is provided by an EP team. So who makes the best? There's all kinds out there. I don't know what you have, but they're all out there, right? And what I mean by that is this. There could be folks who are self-appointed. And what that means is they just say one day, hey, I'm an executive protection specialist, and they are. Because unlike maybe your world, there is not really a specific school or a credential that qualifies them as an executive protection person. So they could just be self-appointed. They just say, yep, I'm that. You could have company appointed, and that could be where a company says, hey, John is now the bodyguard for Mr. Smith. That's it. The company appointed them, and now John thinks he's a bodyguard. There could be a client appointed. So there's very famous tales of celebrities saying, hey, I want Natalie to be my driver, and now Natalie's the bodyguard for that celebrity. That's a client appointed thing. I don't know what training they have or skills, but it's client appointed. Then lastly would be like a government accredited, or this person has actually been to a school, actually has some experience in that world, and they have some bona fides to back up the claim of being an executive protection person. I would just ask, you know, if you're in that situation, what do you all require? What is it? It's interesting to ask that question. When I get hired by outside firms to look at an executive protection program, I do a gap analysis. And what that means is I come in and I look at the team through the lens of what we call 10 questions deep. And these are some of the things I look at. So staffing, who is this person? Where do they come from? What is their background? Has a background investigation been conducted? Please note that when you say we've done a criminal history on John the gardener, you probably haven't. A criminal history check, or I'm sorry, a background investigation is not the same as a criminal history. Okay, a background investigation would be you not only ran a criminal history check of John, but you also did a sex offender registry. You actually looked at his credit. You actually looked at bankruptcy filings. You actually looked at and talked to references, and then you asked those references for 3 more. That's a real background investigation. What most people do is just a quick criminal history. You know, that's a check through what's called the NCIC, or the National Crime Information Center, to see if this guy has been convicted of any crime. That's it. That is not a background investigation. That's a criminal history. They're different. Then I look at the EP team. Do they have license? Are they legally authorized to perform this function in that state? And do they have insurance, meaning liability insurance for their actions? Have they signed a confidentiality agreement for the client? And do they have a non-disclosure? That's important. Do they have a physical fitness test? We know to be a good protection specialist, you have to be in peak physical fitness, physical conditioning. So how do you prove that? Well, you do a physical fitness test. If there's no testing, then their physical fitness is probably questionable. Do you do random drug testing for the EP professional? We recommend you do it at least quarterly, and you do it without them knowing it. You do it randomly. Do they have a baseline executive protection training of any type? Have they been to some type of school where they graduated from that actually taught EP? What we don't want is just, well, they were a cop for 30 years and now they're in EP. Well, that's not as good as they've actually been to a school that teaches executive protection which is different than being a policeman where your job is to identify and arrest. That's a far different job description than cover and evac or close protection. They're different. So we'd like to see that they've been to some type of school. Do they have any equipment? One of the things that you can tell very, very quickly about your EP team is if they have their coats buttoned up, they probably don't have any equipment on to do their job. So that means a firearm, a taser, pepper spray, handcuffs, flashlight. They probably don't have any of that stuff if their coat is buttoned up. And if they do have that stuff and their coat's buttoned up, then they mentally can't get to it, so they may not be mentally acute. Do they have a use of force policy? So if they have a gun or they have a taser or they have pepper spray, do they actually have a use of force policy that governs that? And then lastly, are there written policies and procedures that they follow that keeps them in compliance with their company's guidance? These are the things I look for. For you, a couple things. If I was a new estate manager at a property and I noticed that they have some type of security, bodyguards, whatever, I would ask the lead protection person, hey, could I please read the latest risk assessment? And what that is at the beginning of the engagement, most security firms, to include my own, we will do a risk assessment or threat assessment of the client's life. So we understand, what is the vulnerability, what is going on here, what is the threat to this individual. You need to read that if you can. Now, the reason you need to read that is you need to understand the environment you're working in. If the threat is from cartel gunmen, that is far more concerning than the threat is, say, individuals who are attempting to extort money from the principal. You just need to know that. So I'd ask the question, and if there has never been a risk assessment, to me, that would be a cause for another question of, well, why do we need a bodyguard team then? Or, if we haven't done a risk assessment to say, yes, there's a significant risk to this individual. Know your role and theirs. And what I mean by that is you have a very specific role to play within the estate, and they have a very specific role to play in the estate and the client's life. And those two can and should overlap, and you all should work in concert with one another. I like to say it's symbiotic and not confrontational. So how can you help them? And then how can they help you? And as a bodyguard, some of the things I will do is I'll let you know, hey, the client's off property. Hey, the client's back en route. We'll be there in 10 minutes. Things that you can help me do is you hear the client say, hey, I'm going to go to Madrid on Friday. Hey, let the bodyguards know. They may not know because they got to start planning that trip. So communication is key, and just share it. And again, it's not a confrontational situation, and it shouldn't be. You all are both in the same business, and that is pleasing the client and keeping him safe, right? How can you assist the executive protection team? A couple of things. If you're in charge of the staff, which I think you are, make sure they stay vigilant. What do I mean by that? That they're paying attention to the estate. They're paying attention to the leaky gas smell. They're paying attention to the car parked down the street 3 days in a row with a guy in it. They're paying attention to, hey, bad weather's coming in. Do we have different things on the estate buttoned down? Just keep that vigilance going, and don't go, oh, well, that's someone else's job. It's everyone's job to pay attention and be vigilant. And again, notify. If you see something suspicious, what I say is the acronym's JDLR, or just doesn't look right. If you see something or someone in the area that doesn't look right to you, tell the bodyguards, tell the EP team. Hey, there's a guy walking a dog. I've never seen him before. He's dressed differently for the environment. He's suspicious to me. Tell them so they know. Use the aliases. If you're in charge of doing booking, a lot of times the estate manager or executive assistant is in charge of maybe doing reservations. One thing that you can help us with is don't use their true name. The car service does not need to know Mr. Smith's true name. They do not need to know that, because what we don't want is them knowing that ahead of time, and then they tell someone, especially if this is a celebrity, and that gets out. We don't want to walk into something because the driver's been running his mouth. So just, say whoever, give a fictitious name. As long as that credit card clears, it doesn't matter. or use the bodyguard's name. If I'm the guy, just say James Hamilton and use that name, and the driver can put that on the little sign. Same thing with hotel reservations. You can book it under my name, and then when I get there, I'll check in for the principal. We just don't like to use their real name for reservations. A great example of this recently was there was a senator, I think it was Ted Cruz, and he had made a reservation at a restaurant in DC, and his EA had done it under his true name. Well, by the time he got there, there was a crowd of protesters who knew, because they knew someone from the restaurant, that he was going to be dining there that night, and they accosted him and his wife. And again, if that reservation had been booked in, a fictitious name or, my name, the bodyguard's name, they wouldn't have known that. So we're big fans of don't use their true name and use an alias when you book these reservations. One of the things that Natalie and I have talked about and you need to be aware of is, kidnapping is a real thing, and it can happen, and we call it low likelihood, high consequence, right? The likelihood of it is very low, but the consequence is very, very high. So some of the things you need to know, first of all, is that it's just like real estate. Location, location, location. These things are going to happen in an area that we call an AMT, or an area of mandatory travel. Some of the most noteworthy locations have been the end of the driveway or at the parking space at the business, right? These are locations you can't avoid, locations that the client goes to every day, and that's usually where they happen. The movies like to portray, people coming in the dead of night with guns and taking the person out. It's very, very rare. It does happen, but very rare. Usually it happens in transit with the vehicle, and the location is key. Just to give you some data to that statement, our firm did a study of 1,400 attacks on personnel, which was culminated in a book called Just 2 Seconds. And that study told us that 64% of attacks happen in and around the client's vehicle, and 77% of those things are successful. So it's a very high number. But again, location, location, location. It's going to happen in an area of mandatory travel. The end of the driveway of the estate, maybe if it's a gated community, right at that gate as you're leaving, or at the end of the trip is a known location. Just think about it this way. Where is a client time and place predictable? And most likely that's where these things are going to happen. If you're not familiar with the term virtual kidnapping, that is when someone calls. First of all, a bad guy will know, hey, the client is in transit, they're flying from here to Asia, and they'll call the loved one and say, hey, we've got Mr. Smith, we're gonna hold him until you send us $1 million. And it's called a virtual kidnapping. And of course, it causes anxiety, it causes concern. So one of the things I always recommend is a dress phrase between the client and his wife, and that the protected team knows that dress phrase. What do I mean by that? So the dress phrase could be something very simple. It could be a word that you hardly ever use, like Cyclops, or a word like Appaloosa, right? And that would be the dress term or code that you could utilize during a phone call to say that. Or for the virtual kidnapping scenario, if you receive that phone call, you could merely say to the kidnapper, okay, you've got Mr. Smith, just tell us the phrase or the code and we will get your money. And they should be able to tell you it's Appaloosa. And if they can't, then they probably, or more than likely, do not have Mr. Smith. So that is something that we always recommend. It should be in a binder. It should be refreshed yearly. Make sure you have it, know it. Protective team should know that and share it with you. A lot of these companies have kidnap and ransom policies for these clients, and all you really need to know about that is be aware of the policy. Who's the carrier, Lloyd's of London or whatever, what's the policy number, and then what's the phone number to call if, God forbid, one of the family members is kidnapped. And just update that. I would do it annually, make sure the number stays the same, the point of contact at the company is still Lloyd's of London, and it's still, whatever, John Smith or whoever. Check that yearly. And if you don't have one, it's a good idea to talk to protective team about why they don't have one, because it's something you should have. And then lastly, if you're driving, the principal's kids, for instance, or just for your own, safety and awareness, I always recommend this hopper. If you've joined me before, you know exactly where I'm going, but it's a decision-making hopper for these terrible situations. And so this is what it looks like. It's very simple, right? In the middle, it's identification. What is that? Well, that's situational awareness. That's being aware of your surroundings, looking out for anomalies, things that don't look right, trusting your intuition, all the things I've talked about in the past. And then the decision would be based on what's called the rule of three. So if this thing's right in front of you, 3 feet, I would confront it. If it's 30 feet away, I'd try to get away from it by evacuating. And if it's 300 feet away, not right in your sphere of influence, then I would call someone about it. That's it. Rule of threes: confront it, evacuate from it, or call someone about it. From a driving standpoint, some of the things you should think about is this. When you're driving, you need to leave yourself a turnout. So as you look at this photo, the one on the left is not great because there's no turnout. And the one on the right, or my right, you can see the axle or the tires of the vehicle in front of you. That gives you the turnout. So if you're driving the client's kid, I would be on the right. I'd be doing the one on the right. Doors locked, seatbelts on, see the axle of the vehicle in front of me, and I'm just playing in my brain. What would I do if someone came up to the car, tried to get in or block my path? Well, then I would get away, right? By doing the one on the right, you can get away. The one on the left, you'll probably wreck your car trying to get away. We number lanes left to right. So 1, 2, 3. In this picture, you would be in lane 2. The problem with lane 2 is you can get boxed in quickly. So I don't prefer this, and just understand it's very difficult to drive out of a situation like this. So I prefer a situation like this where I'm in lane 1 or lane 2 in this, but it gives me the out. You see the out there? I'm always planning for the out, and that's for anything. If a guy comes up to my car with a gun, even though I'm usually armed, I'm not going to shoot him. I'm going to drive away, right? So always leave yourself that out, head on a swivel, looking left and right, not buried in the phone. Don't be buried in the phone, head down, where you become an easy target. So if you're driving the principal, again, lock the door, head on a swivel, choose the lane, give yourself a gap, and then be prepared to drive away. And if a guy comes up with a gun, can you run a red light? Well, if you have to, yeah. I mean, be thinking about those types of things as you're driving. We get this an awful lot, and you all may have it too. If you're in a state with a celebrity or someone who's in the news, you may have paparazzi or stalkers or criminals. And invariably, I always get this, well, how do I know that that's what they're doing? Well, I always ask the question, where did you see them? So in a picture like that, if I told you that that person came right at where our vehicle is, the vehicle is the one on the left in that photo, would that be a concern? Yes. Why? Because this guy showed up when he saw us, our car there, knows that car, and he's preparing himself to get a photo, see the camera, of our client as he walks out. So on something like that, all we did was we went out the back way with a drop car to avoid it altogether. Remember what I said in the beginning, we're being paid to avoid inappropriate encounters. This right here is going to be an inappropriate encounter. Something like that. An individual standing next to the principal's vehicle. He's clearly waiting to have an inappropriate encounter. He wants to sign something. He wants to show him something, this bundle of material under his arm. Again, this is a location-driven act. And if you see something like that, you want to avoid it. There's nothing good that's going to come from this. Just avoid it altogether. Reposition the car, go out the back way, hire an Uber, take the client another direction, just avoid this thing altogether. And lastly is same thing. This is us in New York. This person's waiting to get a photo. They're basically just loitering, attempting to have an inappropriate encounter with us. So it's all location driven. Always remember that. If this is coming out of a meeting or this is right outside the apartment, then that's not going to be good. To try to avoid it, call police about it if you can, tell security about it, just avoid it. A terrible example of this is a shooting that happened in Florida, and this is an area mandatory travel. That's that AMT. right? So this is a young lady who had been dating a police officer, broke up with him because he had some issues. He waited. He knew that she walked the dog every day. He waited right at the gate, the pedestrian gate of the apartment complex, where he knew she'd come out, area mandatory travel, and he had an inappropriate encounter with her. Unfortunately, that encounter was actually a violent encounter, and he shot her, and then he shot himself. But the location, to me, was, again, I say this all the time, I don't know why people commit violent acts, but I always understand where they commit violent acts. That location is very, very important for this situation. It was an area mandatory travel, somewhere where she couldn't avoid the end of her driveway at the apartment complex. We often say, don't be a source of information. We tell this to our protectors, and I'm going to tell you the same thing. You and your staff should not be a source of information about the client. What do I mean by that? So a person shows up at the estate and asks this very specific question: does Mr. Smith live here? A favorable response would be, we do not talk about our residents. An unfavorable response would be, well, he is not here now. So you basically just said, yeah, he's here. You've confirmed it. A favorable response to this question could be, why do you ask? An unfavorable response would be, well, leave a message and I will get it to him. Well, that basically just means that you are saying he's here, and now you're involved in the transaction, that you will give it to him. That's not a good thing. Another favorable response would be, well, how may I be of assistance? You're not answering the question directly, okay? Unfavorably would be, yes, he does. Well, that clearly is bad. This whole thing is what we call the boomerang. And we teach our protectors to do the ones on the left. So if we're walking in a crowd with a celebrity, it's very clear, like it's no secret that we protect Arnold Schwarzenegger. So if an individual says to me, hey, isn't that Arnold? I would say, how you doing today, sir? I wouldn't confirm it, right? Or, hey, where's Arnold going? Hey, sir, why do you ask? Right? Hey, sir, how can I help you? Hey, sir, are you doing okay? We like to engage that way, but we don't like to confirm anything. So that's that boomerang technique that we use, and feel free to utilize it. But just don't be a source of information. Another thing that we always recommend when we do surveys and we also do assessments, is we do a couple things with staff. One of the things is we tell staff, if a vendor's coming on site, require them to sign an NDA. They have to sign a non-disclosure agreement before they come on site. Then we ask for a photo of the vendor, right? And if they are like, hey, why are you taking my photo? You could say something like, it's for our files, or you could say something like, hey, we send it through our security department. Well, if they turn around and take their ID and then run away, well, then you know they weren't good for the client and to be on the estate. If they're legitimate, they should be, hey, no problem, that's fine with me. And they give you the photo and you move on. And again, if you have a security team, I'm sure they're doing all this, but if you don't have a security team, then these are some things you ought to think about doing. We monitor social media at estates where we work. Why do we do that? We want to know what's being put out about the client. So if he has a Twitter page, we're on that Twitter page, and we're monitoring what's being said and what's being put out by not only the client, but also what's being said about him by people who are monitoring it. So what you don't want, for instance, is something on Twitter, which is a photo by a vendor. Hey, look, I'm on so-and-so Arnold's estate. Bam, that's immediate grounds for termination. So we monitor the social media. Lastly, one of the things Gavin likes to say is make slow and careful decisions about whom you let in your life, and fast, decisive decision about those who you exclude. And unfortunately, I think people do it the other way around. They quickly let someone into their life, and then they take forever to get them out. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I don't know. I want to give them another chance. And it's the other way around. Slow, careful decisions about whom you let into your world. And if your intuition or their actions say bad, get away from them. Some of the things we just like to point out quickly about working at an estate, you could have some unwanted communications from a vendor or from a staff member or what have you. So we just want to help you with a couple things. And one of those is if it's face-to-face, we want to make that as brief as possible, right? One of the things Gavin says in The Gift of Fear, and it's very, very true, is that if a guy says no, it's the end of the conversation. Unfortunately, if a woman says no, it's the beginning of a negotiation. So as a woman, you should always respect the word no. And if you say no to an individual and they don't hear you, or they try to team, or they try to stay in your space, alarm bells should be ringing in your head that, hey, I told this guy no, and he's still here. He hasn't left me alone. He hasn't quit calling. He hasn't quit showing up at the estate. You have to definitively say no, and then make another decision based on his actions, right? If you're at a party, or this person shows up in your world, maybe outside the estate, maybe at a Starbucks you go to, and it gives you the creeps, say something to him like, "I'll be right back," and then leave out the back door. The reason we like to advise that term or that direction is if you say, "Hey, I got to leave," he'll find a way to follow you to your car. But if you just say, "Hey, I'll be right back," he'll stay. And people will say something like, "Well, won't this make him mad?" Well, we have never really assessed a case where just because he got he got offended, that drove him to the point of something terrible. So feel free to just say something like that and move on. If he's got your phone number, we don't recommend you block or delete messages. We recommend that you put them into a file so that police can use them to show a pattern if you're going for a protective order or something like that. If he appears at your work site and at your home, then that's obviously more concerning than if he's just showing up at your home where you all had a history. So again, if it's, say, an ex-boyfriend or something like that, and they're moving on to where you work, that's more concerning, and you need to take some positive steps to stop this situation. Unfortunately, a lot of police officers will recommend a restraining order to women. Not great. Why? Because a restraining order doesn't immediately get them out of your space. It takes a while. It's a civil order. You have to go back to the court that issued it. You have to get them tell them he violated, then they'll set a warrant. It'll take 30, 60 days sometimes. But if you have a protective order with an arrest clause and he shows up at your work, then he can be arrested by the deputies or the police that show up, because that's a criminal offense, and that's far better than just a restraining order. And also on that note, we always recommend for staff that it's a good policy to tell all the staff, hey, if you have a restraining order or a protective order against someone, let us know about it, right? Because that person could show up and it may not have anything to do with the client, but he could bring violence there, and now the client is in that world. So we always recommend that. Sometimes they don't want to do it, but that's a recommendation our firm often makes. I get this one a lot. People are like, hey, James, my ex-boyfriend, he's done this and this. Is he dangerous? Yeah, all human beings are dangerous, okay? It's situational, and everyone has an ability to be dangerous. So I don't like that question. Couple of things. We get often asked, hey, there was an interaction between an estate manager and a vendor, and she feels threatened, right? Well, let's make sure we're all clear on what a threat is. So on this slide, you've got 3 statements, right? Your days are numbered if you don't drop this lawsuit. If you don't leave our president alone, you're going to die. And lastly, I'm going to kill you. Only one of these is a threat, okay? And it's the last one. The other ones are intimidations. See, the first 2, they have that word if. See that if? Your days are numbered if you don't do something. They're just trying to intimidate you. But when they say very specifically, I am going to kill you, I am going to rape you, that is a threat. There is no if there. That to us is much more concerning than the first 2, which someone's just trying to intimidate you or, so think of it that way. If you're dealing with something at the estate, you know, a vendor says something, you think it's a threat, probably isn't, probably some type of an intimidation. But if they give you no way out, then that's a threat, and that's something we want to elevate to security and or police. We talked about that one before. Just Gavin says that security measures, you know, fall into two basic categories, you know, things that reduce risk and those that just reduce anxiety. So I'm just telling you this because it helps you through your optics. And so if someone says, you know, we have security on site, and that's what you show up and you see, well, you know, there's not really security. Okay, it's just a joke. Or, you know, there's a sign in a lobby. I took this in Pakistan and I just loved it. It says that arms can't be brought inside the hotel. Personal guards or gunmen are required to drop their weapons with security. Well, what the hell is a gunman? I don't even know what that means still to this day. I think that's like a real job down there. But just because you have a sign, is it enforced? You know, I don't know. What about a magnetometer? You know, if you're going somewhere with the client and they have magnetometers, but it beeps and no one searches you, then you know those things are just window dressing. Or they're not even plugged in. I've walked through some that aren't even plugged in. You know, it's just window dressing. Oftentimes you'll have people say on an estate, hey, we need to get more cameras. I would ask you, what are you going to do with them? Is someone going to monitor the camera? If so, then that's good. That's called a security camera. If that thing is just on loop and you're going to literally play the video back after the estate's broken into, then that's an investigative camera the police will use to try to identify the bad guy. Not so good. So I'm not a big fan of that. And then lastly, do you have any policies that are written down, and do you do reports, right? So if I had a security team on my estate, I would ask them, hey, do you all do daily reports? I want to see a daily report of their activity. Why? Because it documents what they saw during the day and what they've been doing. What you don't want is a situation where they only report an actual incident. Well, if there's no incident in 365 days, at the end of the year, what did they do? You don't know. You have nothing tangible. It's really hard to prove what didn't happen, right? In my business, deterrence is really hard to measure. And so I always recommend, and what we do in our firm is we do daily reports. And we offer the estate manager to actually see those reports and put them on the email list if they want to be, to see what was done that day. Just something to think about. I'm wrapping up here. I wanted to end, Natalie and I had talked a lot about some package guidance, because right before Christmas, maybe between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we had a real epidemic, if you will. That's kind of a strong word, but maybe true, of packages going out to people. An individual from Florida was arrested. So it always begs the question, you know, what is your plan? So what's the plan at the estate for a package, right? So first thing is, do you sign for the package? Okay, if you are signing for packages at the estate, I would ask you to not use your real name. I would not sign James Hamilton. Why? Because if the bad guy sends a package to the celebrity or the client and puts on there, I want notification of receipt, and he sees James Hamilton signed it, we've had this happen. He can show up at the estate and he can talk to the security guy and say, hey, I have an appointment at 8. James said it was okay. And the bodyguard who actually works for me would go, oh, you mean James Hamilton? The guy's like, yeah, James Hamilton. Oh, okay, I'll let you in. Well, now you're in the estate. This has actually happened. So what we recommend is, if you're going to get packages at the estate, which is not our first recommendation, I'll talk about that in a minute, but if you are going to receive packages at the estate, that you sign a moniker, right? So Ashley Smith, whatever. Everyone on the site signs Ashley Smith, so that you know, hey, if a guy shows up at the estate saying Ashley Smith said it was okay, you know that's the moniker. Hey, this guy is actually here for nefarious intent. The best case scenario is your security is paying for a sorting facility to search the packages, gets them cleared, and then security goes and picks them up. They're labeled, they bring them to the estate. That's the best way to do it. If that's not being paid for or that's not being done, next best case is you do it on site with PPE, personal protective equipment, x-ray machine, and then you label it and give it to the client. Talked about that. Question all the time, what's suspicious? Well, when you look at these package bombs, if it doesn't look right, it's probably not. You can get one of these U.S. Postal suspicious mail posters, and it says a lot of things like, too much stamps, or too many stamps rather, stains, labeling that's done with a label maker. Those are types of things that would make it suspicious to me. If you see something like that, don't handle it, isolate it. Obviously don't open it, call 911 and activate your emergency plan, the plan that had to have been written before this package showed up. You can't create your emergency plan during the emergency. It won't work out too well. This is the actual photo of one of those packages that was sent. This one was to a sitting congresswoman, and you see the return address was Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And again, suspicious. Look at the too much stamp, too many stamps, using a label maker. Those types of things to me would be suspicious, and I would not let the client get their hands on this. Some general recommendations is if you are going to open a package, make sure it's a flat, stable surface. Using blades to cut the packaging or tape, directed away from you. Open flaps or boxes slowly to avoid dispersing any type of content like a powder. And then don't reach through packaging to remove it. Look in there before you stick your hand in there. That's it. Hopefully that was covered a lot, I know. But if you have any questions, Natalie, I am open for any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, okay?
Perfect.
Questions?
All right. Well, thank you so much. That was incredibly informative.
Oh, good. Thanks.
We did have a few questions come in, though, so let's start addressing some of those.
Okay.
First, what are the top few expectations principals have when they first engage your services or EP services in general?
Yeah, that you do what you say you're going to do. So for us, we say we will provide you a qualified protector. And what is that? That's someone who has been trained, who shows up on time, who shows up professionally dressed for the environment, doesn't outdress the principal and doesn't underdress for the situation, that looks appropriate. That, if they're in a business setting, they have a nice suit, they have clean shoes, not combat boots, and they have their equipment on, and it's worn in a way in which you can't really tell because they've taken the time to get a suit jacket, for instance, that's larger. They don't wear medium, right? I know that's in vogue, and medium is a guy that should be wearing a large, but he wears a medium, right? And it's real tight because he wants to show off his physique. That's not good for a bodyguard because you will see all of his equipment. Our job is to blend in the environment and basically be what we call the gray man. And so, yeah, those are the things he's looking for. He wants you to show up on time, do your job, do it correctly. Don't talk too much. Don't have body odor. Don't be a pain, and be professional. Because if you're not professional, he's going to hold you accountable, and he holds you accountable by terminating you.
So by professional attire, you're not suggesting they be dressed in black suits with earwigs when the family's on vacation at the beach?
No, they have to be smart enough to dress appropriate for the environment. Again, the tropics are a more difficult environment than the Arctic, right? Because we can wear heavier clothing to disguise all of our gear. And they may have to make some concessions. They may say, we're not going to wear, X, Y, and Z to blend into the environment. But there should be gear that they definitely don't leave home without. Like for us, it's a bullet-resistant vest. We wear a vest everywhere we go, period. Why? Because we know that the threat in America is from handguns. And we want to be able to outfit our protectors with something that will stop what's most probable. So we don't deviate from that.
Perfect. Is there a checklist of situations that families should be prepared for?
Yeah, depending on where you live geographically. So, like we just went through this in California with fire. So, if I lived in California, especially up near the hills, I would have a fire plan. What is that? What what do we have? What are the resources? Do we have a fire station nearby? Do we have an actual pump here at the home? Do we have the foam? Some of our clients have the foam that they wrap their home in. So that would be, for me, I would work that list based on the probabilities, right? I live in down near South Carolina, so I have a hurricane plan for my home. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I prepare? So that's the list I would create, would be based on probabilities of your geographical area. And then I would look at that list probably on an annual basis, and I'd drill for it, try annually. But if it's something, that you do or have frequently, if, for instance, fire, maybe I could do that semi-annually. Make sure the pump works, make sure, the foam's fully charged, that type of thing.
Okay. You touched on this. You touched on this. Do you recommend practicing emergency procedures? If so, how often?
I do, but let's not get carried away. Right? Again, I would do the probability stuff. Things that you think could happen, I do it annually. That should be part of that routine risk assessment, but you should have a plan for the probabilities, and also think about, what would I do with not just the family, but what would I do with the dogs? How I get them out? What's the plan for them? What car are we taking? Let's say it's a fire. Where are we relocating to? I mean, some of these clients have unbelievable amounts of, ability, so they could get a helicopter quickly and then get out, right? Stand by. Becker, can you go get my charger? Just go up in the office, grab my black bag. I'm about to die. Sorry about that. I'm losing my computer here. So again, I would drill annually if I can, and then don't drill for things that, an asteroid plan. Like, I wouldn't have a drill for that, because it probably won't happen. But I would definitely have a drill for, what would we do in case of an earthquake? What would we do in case of a fire? What would we do in case of a hurricane? Those are the types of things, again, the probabilities. Or an intruder. What is the plan? Especially if you're living in an area of the country that is experiencing a high level of break-ins. What is the plan for an intruder? Do you have a safe room? How do I know to get to the safe room? What's the code to get in there? All these things need to kind of been already worked out ahead of time. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Am I still muted? No. Am I muted? Okay, but you're muted.
Got you now?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
All right. There we go. So how does an estate manager create or obtain a risk assessment?
Yeah. I would contact a security company, a reputable security company. Obviously, I know one, but outside of us, it's irrelevant. It doesn't, anyone can do them. Well, not anyone can do them, sorry. Just get a reputable security firm, and then just ask them to conduct a risk assessment of the client, pattern of life, and they'll be able to provide you with, they'll come in, they'll ask a bunch of questions, and then they'll give you a report that basically says, based on this assessment, multiple fans seeking an inappropriate email.
You froze up for a minute there. So go back to when I asked how do I obtain a risk assessment, just start there.
Yeah, I would just contact a reputable security firm, ask for a risk assessment for the client, and what they will look at is they'll look at, what is the threat to this individual, either based on position, company, high net worth individual, maybe based on political activities, maybe based on community things that he's doing, is either anger people, something like that. They'll look at, family members, all of these things, and then they'll identify, what's most concerning, what they found, social media research, background information, past threats. Maybe you have letters or emails around, and then they'll provide a written, assessment of what they perceive to be the risk to this individual, and then they should provide suggestions to mitigate the risk, like a security driver or full-time protective detail, or private air travel versus commercial air travel, or I've done one where the guy was he was just kind of a daredevil, and the biggest thing for him was your lifestyle is dangerous. You like to do things that are inherently dangerous, and the mitigation would be can you quit doing them? And he's like, no. Okay, got it.
All right. And then lastly, how do we prepare for attending live events such as concerts?
Yeah, that's a big one because of Vegas, as we all are aware of. As I look at concerts, first thing I want to know is what kind of music is it? What kind of crowd is going to be gathered? Is it outdoor or indoor? Indoor to me is a little bit safer than outdoor. When I get there, do they have any security? I'm looking through, like when I park. When I park, I'm looking around. Who guided me in? Was it a police officer? Was it a security person? Or did no one guide me in? Because if no one guided me in, then my car is probably not very safe. But if a police officer did, because he's working off duty, I feel better about it. When I get to the entrance, if they have a magnetometer and it actually is working and plugged in and it beeps and then they search me with their hands, I feel really good about that. That tells me, okay, they would have found a gun. If I'm with my wife and she has her purse and they look in it with a flashlight and a stick, I feel better because now they're actually searching, versus if they just ask her to open it up and then they don't, they just cursory look, okay, no problem. Then I don't feel as good because I feel like, okay, it's possible someone has a gun in here. When I'm in the concert, if it's general admission, I like to sit on the edge of the row and not in the middle, if I can. If it's just a big general admission standing area, I like to get to the ends or the back so that I'm looking, where am I going? Going in case of what? In case I hear gunfire, right? That's in America, very probable situation. Where would I go? I try to identify somewhere that has overhead cover, like a bathroom. Okay, and it doesn't matter in that situation, oh, by the way, if it's male or female bathroom, okay, we don't care. Just, I'm going to that bathroom, I'm taking my wife, and we're gonna get to that bathroom. Once I get there, I'm gonna figure out what do we have, right? Are police responding, put this guy down? Is it a sniper? What's going on? I'm not gonna run out with the crowd. Why am I not gonna run out with the crowd? A couple things, you could get trampled. There could be, literally this whole thing was designed to get people as they run out, like what happened in England. So I'm going to try to get to a place like a bathroom or a closet, or a closet's not a great example. Maybe just like in a lot of auditoriums or concert halls, you'll see a green room or a space where people are. I try to get into that room if I can. But bathrooms I like. A lot of times you can lock a door or lock a stall. Get there, figure out what you have, maybe even make a phone call, understand what's going on, or just take a minute and listen. What is happening here? And then formulate a plan to hunker down till it ends or get out altogether.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today. James Hamilton, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Oh, our pleasure. And to all of our visitors and members, thanks for logging in and have a great week.